It's my great pleasure and honor to be here with Alan Morinis, who is the Dean of the Musar Institute, which he founded in 2004 and has really revolutionized bringing back Musar, the spiritual and ethical development movement, inspiring chants and exercises and learning and practices to grow in our character. So let me ask you, how did you get into this? I'm sure we could talk for hours about that, but how did you get into this, and what has this done for your life personally?
I wrote a whole book about that. Climbing Jacob's Ladder is the story of my encounter. I grew up in a Jewish household that did not have very much religion or spiritual content. It was a great household, but that was not what it was about. And so I grew up knowing I was Jewish, but not having that much Jewish content. When I was 47 years old, by that point, my life had been very successful in so many ways, but at that point I hit a wall. Things fell apart in some ways, and something opened in me that said, there is probably guidance in the Jewish world where you can find lessons that previous generations have learned about how to put one foot in front of the other in this world. And it was real hypothesis for me because I had no evidence to go on. So I just went searching, I went reading through the Jewish world with no guide and no real sense of what I was looking for. And at one point I stumbled on a book written by a historian about the Musar movement that took place in Lithuania in the 19th century. And everything I was reading was speaking to me. It was all about guidance for how a human being can navigate and negotiate a way through life that is the best possible. And so that was very motivating for me. And then from that article, I got many other sources were referenced in that article. And I took myself to the library and I spent 2 years reading up on Musar. And then by that point, I thought, this is amazing that this exists in the Jewish world. Because my experience in the Jewish world was that it paid no attention to the inner life of the individual. It was all about ritual, it was about holidays, it was about commandments, it was about behavior. But the qualities of the inner life, for that, people had to go elsewhere. So that was very motivating for me, and my journey continued from there.
So for those who have they've tried synagogue and prayer, and it didn't work for them. They've tried, even some text study, and it didn't connect, it didn't light their fire. Why do you think they should give Musar a chance?
You know what, the truth is that I don't necessarily, because I'm not evangelical. So my role as I see it, and this is what I've been doing over these years, has been to say that Musar people should be aware of it, that it exists, and that it's an opportunity, like a doorway in the Jewish world. I grew up in a Jewish world in which there was no doorway to personal inner work. There is a pathway for that. That's the Musar path. And I think it's great if people know about it. What they all find is that it is directly connected to everyday life as it is, because it focuses on the qualities of our inner life as they express themselves in everyday experience. So patience and impatience and anger and calmness and worry and trust and all these things that we experience daily in ordinary human life. Well, imagine bringing 1,100 years of experience and wisdom to bear so that we don't have to make it up as we go along. We're not the first people to contend with worry. We're not the first people to contend with impatience. For hundreds of years, we've been having wise ancestors recording their experience of all these inner traits, and that's there to be called on. And then I just say to people, see for yourself. See if it makes a difference. See if it adds wisdom to your life. See if it maybe gives you new choices, and see what happens as a result. It's all about experimentation, because that's where you'll see how your life can be different, but it's in a very practical, direct way. So when you mention prayer or synagogue or learning, that may not speak to someone right where they are right now. But the fact that they drive themselves crazy every day in a Starbucks because of their own impatience, they might have something to learn from previous generations.
I wonder how this plays out differently in the 21st century, in that many of these ideals and values that we hold so dear and cherish are degraded in society today. And, we see just a lack of truth, a lack of ability to feel shame, greed, and just, lack of ability to cultivate peace. I mean, the list goes on. How do we continue to hold those values and midot so dear to us in a society that degrades them so much?
It's a very real problem which is getting worse.
Right.
Because the degradation of values just keeps multiplying. It keeps feeding on itself. It's like on television, when the standards of decency get lower and lower, they only drive it lower and lower and lower. And so we see that around all those sorts of things that you talked about. And I would add compassion, and I would add kindness, and there's so many things that are being degraded in the public arena right now. And my response to that is something that I've heard from my own investment advisor, that when you have an investment strategy and you've invested in something and then the market goes crazy, stick to your long-term strategy. Don't panic. Don't sell out. And from the Jewish point of view, there are certain values that we have held as the highest ideals for human life over 3,500 years. So when the market goes a little bit crazy, don't sell out. Stick to the long-term plan. And I think that means redoubling the investment in the things that we hold as primary for human life. Compassion, kindness, dignity, respect, honor, generosity, the primary Jewish values. The far from being threatened, I think what we see going on in the world is a call to strengthen our commitment to those, because that's our mutual fund. That's our long-term investment strategy. And it has served us well for 3,500 years, and I think we have to stay true to that.
I think of what Rav Kook and those before him called Gaiva de Kedusha, sort of a holy chutzpah or holy arrogance, that even when others aren't sticking to it, that we hold on to the confidence that we're on the right path.
I think we have to, because otherwise we become the purveyors of untruth. We become the uncompassionate ones. We become the people of unkindness. Okay, I don't sign up for that agenda. That is not my goal. And I think right now we have all the more reason to strengthen. And I think about the younger generation, how important it is that whoever's leading within the Jewish world, think about millennials, think about college students, think about teenagers. When I think about college students, I think it is very possible that in today's environment, somebody would get the message that the only way to succeed is arrogance. And yet the model of leadership in the Jewish world is humility. So there's a direct contrast between the self-aggrandizing leadership and the person who is called in the Torah the most humble man on the face of the earth, which is Moses, who led the people from slavery to freedom. So we have a different model. And I think it is very important to look at the long view and say, if I had to choose between arrogance and humility, in the long run, I'd put my money on humility.
So my last question for you today is this a movement? We tend to call it the Musar movement. Is it a movement, or just a lot of individuals and small communities working on this? And if so, where does the movement go from here?
There was a movement, that was the 19th, early 20th century, so that Musar and movement going together has a history. Musar movement, it seems to be in line with one another. There's certainly been a great expansion of interest as Musar has come sort of more alive in our generation, speaking to that way of inner guidance in a Jewish context. That's been a big innovation. I think people have responded to it because, my view has been it's impossible the Jewish people survived 3,500 years and ignored the inner life of the individual. And of course, it's not true. Did not ignore it. I think that what we have to continue to do is to strengthen that sort of connection between the contemporary generation and our heritage of wisdom for inner living, because we got the same problems that people had in the 15th century. People were suffering with untruth and worry and laziness, and when you read the books from the 16th century and the 15th century, it's very familiar stuff. And people accumulated learning from that, and we have the possibility of building on that. So I think that, yes, individuals, but yes, communities, and yes, as a Jewish people, continuing to be committed to becoming the best possible version of ourselves that we can be, living up to the ideals that the Jewish tradition holds out. I think that continues to be our mission, and I think we see it growing and growing and growing because there's a resonance with that, and that's what keeps me busy.
If you're inspired like I am, look into who is teaching Musar in your local community, how you can join a VAD. I presume if you contact the Musar Institute, they can help you
Yes.
find resources in your local community. There's also retreats and conferences that the Musar Institute does, so get on their listserv and get onto Amazon and find Alan Morinis' books that he's written. Enjoy, and thank you so much. Much hatzlacha and bracha.
Thank you, Shmuly.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.